Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my phenomenal co-host, Maricella Herrera. Hi, Maricella. How are you doing?
Hello. Okay. How are you, Kristy?
I'm doing pretty good. Although, as I was introducing you, I'm realizing that you have not taped many of our interviews lately.
No, I have been behind the scenes, taking care of business. No, I've been doing a lot of different things for both, as you know, my life has been interesting, doing a lot of different things for Ellevate. Our marketing lead was on maternity leave, and that meant I had a lot more things to do, which is fun. I enjoy the marketing side of things, so it was nice. But she's back, and I will have more time, hopefully.
Yay! Well, you say that. However, we are heading straight into one of our favorite times of the year, which is Mobilize Women. Maricella, give our listeners a sneak peek into all that will happen in Mobilize Women.
I'm super excited. As many of you listeners know, Mobilize Women it's kind of my baby. I'm I'm very, very passionate about the work we do under the Mobilize Women umbrella and through the Mobilize Women program, which is really about how can we use our collective power to change the culture of business, and not just the culture of business, but really change the world and make it a more equitable and just place. We tend to, we started with our Mobilize Women Summit 5 years ago, which is so hard to believe that it's been 5 years, and started out just as an in-person summit in New York. Our first couple of years, 250 people in the room. Then it grew to quite the big happening in New York City with like 600 plus people in the room and thousands of people watching online. And we've always wanted to, through Mobilize Women, really tackle conversations about how the world can be a much more equitable place for everyone, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their religion, their sexual orientation, you name it. We believe very much so that everyone should have full and equal access to power. And Mobilize Women is about us coming together with the women and allies and non-binary individuals in our community and saying, we can make this happen. Let's have conversations that are not the usual one. Let's not talk about diversity stats and remind people that diversity is good for business, because that's kind of base level. We should know that by now. Like, what is the next thing that we can do? How are we really going to come back from the pandemic with much more of a different shift in the way we see things and the way we tackle business issues, the way we tackle world issues? And a lot of it, I'll be honest, in this last couple of years, issues about race. So anyway, Mobilize Women Week, we did it last year virtually because of COVID for a full week instead of an in-person summit in New York. And this year we are doing it again, about 15 sessions throughout the course of 5 days. It will start on June 21st. All sessions are free, so I would highly recommend you go to ellevatenetwork.com/summit, or just check it out on our Ellevate Network page. There's a link in our homepage to the whole program. And we will be talking about how we should start dismantling social constructs, how companies can build psychological safety and belonging within their organization, how the crisis and the pandemic has brought innovation, and how crises in general spark innovation for the future. We will talk about power dynamics and how we can keep power accountable. And that means everything from our government to those business leaders to ourselves, and how we can use our power and our social capital to make change wherever we are. So I'm sorry I just spoke a lot, but like I said, I am very, very passionate about this.
Oh, thank you, Maricella. I cannot wait for Mobilize Women. As I said, one of my favorite times of the year. I just find the conversations are mind opening and the connections are real. And afterwards, I know that our community and those that are joining us in Mobilize Women, which I hope all of you will, are ready to take on the world. Today's guests, Elaine Logue and Candace Ellison, are doing just that within their workplace. They are senior leaders at Charles Schwab. And in our discussion, we talk so much about, how to find your place, how to support one another, and how to really find that purpose in what you do every day. It's a phenomenal conversation. Elaine and Candace are just true role models, and Charles Schwab is a valuable partner of Ellevate and all of the community and connections that we build and create. So let's get to my conversation with Elaine and Candace. Hello, Elaine and Candace. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast. It is such an honor to have you joining us here today. I wanted to start off hearing about your stories. It's always a treat when we get two guests on the podcast and we get to be inspired by different stories. I love the power of a narrative. So I'm going to ask you, Elaine, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off and sharing a little bit about who you are and where you are today.
Hi, thank you so much. So, I was born in Scotland, in Glasgow, and spent the first 22 years of my life there. And then I actually started my career in London. I would say that my career is a mixture of sort of happy accidents and also never saying no to anything I was offered. So, always saying yes, basically. So, my first job post college was at Arthur Andersen in London, and I was a trainee accountant. And honestly, I did not take that job because I wanted to be an accountant. I actually wanted to do a gap year in Australia. And I'd saved up enough money for the living and traveling expenses, but not for the ticket. So I took a job at Arthur Andersen, thinking I would do the job for a year. And then I was able to get the bank loan to buy the ticket to go to Australia. And my plan was after a year to go and do teacher training. So after my year in Australia, I started the job at Arthur Andersen and I'd asked to be put in the charities group. But they actually put me in the financial services team. And so I thought, well, I'm only doing this for a year, so I might as well stay for a year and learn something new. But they also put me on an accelerated exam program. And so after a year, I had actually completed most of the exams necessary to become a chartered accountant in the UK. So it just felt foolish not to just stay for the extra 3 years and do the work experience, or the extra 2 years at that point. And so after 3 years, I thought, okay, now it's time for me to become a teacher. And the reality is that I was earning more than twice what I'd earn as a teacher. And I was traveling. I was in my mid-20s. I was enjoying my life in London. And so I decided to delay teaching for a while and stay at Anderson's. But the thing that I knew for certain I didn't want was to be a partner in a public accounting firm. And honestly, at that point in my life, I wouldn't say that I was pursuing a career, to be quite honest with you. I was interested in having a job I enjoyed and being able to pay the bills and enjoy my life in London. I worked hard, but I wouldn't say I had career goals. But what I did know was that I enjoyed learning. And so I decided to take a job in internal audit at UBS. And I thought it would really give me an opportunity to understand an international banking group. And I loved that job. I really loved it. It was remarkable because enabled me to see investment banking, asset management, hedge funds, private banking, US broker dealers, institutional and retail, etc., etc. I worked for extended periods of time in the UK, Switzerland, and the United States. So it ticked a lot of boxes for me. And I stayed with UBS for 17 years. I was always in control type roles. I moved from audit to operational risk to supervision to change in program management. And in those 17 years, I was given the opportunity to advance. So I, started at the most junior, corporate position in the company. And when I left UBS after 17 years, I was a managing director, which at that point was the most senior corporate position in the company. So I had a lot of opportunity to grow myself, to grow my career. And over those years, I realized that I really did want to have a career. It was more to me than just going to work every day. It was a place that I put a lot of passion and energy into, and I wanted it to be meaningful and make a difference. I think that really what caused me to leave UBS was the financial crisis. It really caused me to rethink what I was doing and what I wanted to do. I actually thought about becoming a teacher again. But again, luck intervened. And I got a call from a headhunter at exactly the time I was planning to leave to become a teacher. And it was about an opportunity at Charles Schwab, where I have been for the past 11 years. And honestly, after I'd met 3 or 4 of the people at Schwab, 3 or 4 of the leaders, I knew that I wanted to come and work here. I love this company. I love the people here. I love our strategy. It's really simple. We're always looking at the world through the eyes of our clients and just trying to do the right thing by people. We serve people at all wealth levels. And I really love the work that we do to engage new investors and people who are less affluent and who are working hard every day to try and save some money so they can retire and support their kids' education and that kind of thing. And so I've now been in the financial services industry for 32 years, sort of by accident. And I've decided now that I am actually going to leave financial services and I'm going to retire from financial services in May of this year. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I am hoping to maybe go back to school. And I do want to change my career entirely. And I'm hoping to do something maybe in the counselling or social justice field, maybe do some teaching. But I'm excited to start a new career and to see where life takes me, and I'm very energized by that. So that's the story of my career so far.
Elaine, so much there, and to think it all started with the desire to go to Australia.
Yes,
led you here. I can understand. I've been to Australia. It's worth it. I have to say, we have at Ellevate we do a number of regular roundtables. I lead one with our executives, expert-led discussions, peer connections, and we have one for seasoned professionals. And I mention it because so many in that group are I think in a similar place to you, which is, all right, I've had this fulfilling and amazing career for a number of years. I think you said 32 years. And
yeah.
What's next? What's that next adventure? And trying to figure that out is exciting, but I think sometimes daunting. So I'll send you information. I would love for you to connect with that group.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
And then you'll have to come back on the podcast and tell us where you ended up, because inquiring minds want to know, Elaine.
I would love that too. Thank you.
Candace, let's turn it over to you. I would love to hear about your story.
Yes, so I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri, the Show Me State. And I moved to the DFW area 7 years ago. But I started in this industry with Edward Jones, working in client reporting. I created client account statements, tax reporting, 1099 packages, client letters, and other informational documents for our clients and regulators. But I didn't know it then, but that was the best experience for me to have starting out in financial services. To do my work, I had to understand every product and service that the firm offered. If there was a new product delivered or a change to a federal regulation, I worked with the applicable product department to modify their procedures to comply. I worked with IT to update systems to support that activity. I assisted our compliance area with creating policy. I'd work with our financial advisors to help them explain and understand the reporting that their clients were receiving. And it's a private firm. And so I wore multiple hats. And it was not, like I said, later in my career when I realized, gosh, you did so much. And little if people had known that it was this young 20-year-old sitting in the back office on a typewriter typing up specialized 99s our clients and reading through a tax regulation book, trying to understand, how would we explain this activity and how do we comply? But I just remember those nights, and this is back in pager days, getting paged in the middle of the night to come in and check and review our documents. But it was a great experience. And this was a time in St. Louis, A.G. Edwards and Edward Jones were kind of the big boys in town. And Wachovia Securities and A.G. Edwards created a deal to acquire A.G. Edwards. And A.G. Edwards was heavily recruiting part Wachovia at the time. Part of that deal was Wachovia Securities had to move their headquarters to St. Louis. And I went over and I joined Wachovia. And I don't know if any of you probably don't remember around this time. This was around 2008. I remember coming to work and I had to fly back and forth to Richmond, Virginia, where Wachovia Securities headquarters was. And I'm sitting in the hotel. I had been there maybe 3 or 4 weeks and turn on the news in the morning, getting ready to come in the office, and heard, I think Citigroup had purchased Wachovia Securities. And I'm like, hold on, what's happening?
Surprise.
I just joined this firm. What is happening? And then maybe a couple of days later on, then Wells Fargo came in and we became Wells Fargo advisors, where I spent a good amount of my career with Wells Fargo. So that's really, all of that work set the stage for 15 plus years now in this industry. I've had several roles. I've went on, if you speak to anyone in financial services, with the acquisitions that happen over time, you pretty much have worked at several if you've been in this industry long enough. But I've always been in the compliance and risk area. So developing compliance policy or originating sales practice, surveillance and monitoring programs, audit execution of our branches or internal departments. And now I support our first line businesses with risk management efforts. So I've been with Schwab for 3.5 years now, all under the strong and illustrious leadership of Elaine. I joined Schwab in Westlake 1 year into when the campus was erected. So I think that was a pivotal time for me to join Schwab, because I was really able to help with establishing their presence in the community. And when they talk about the culture here, that was a culture shock for me. I mean, just how important people are, not just our clients, but the employees, and how important it is for collaboration. But part of all through my career, I've always had my day job, but I've always had the opportunity to help in diversity and inclusion efforts and supporting employee resource groups and our different organization commitments and partnerships in the community. And I remember my very first day at Schwab, I came in and I asked HR, who are your ERGs or your employee resource groups or your affinity groups? And they said, well, we're brand new. We don't have that yet. And apparently there was someone else who joined exactly on that same day who asked the same question. And HR said, the two of you should talk. And so the two of us came together and we started that process of creating those affinity groups and bringing them to Westlake. And since then, we've just seen so much growth in that area and so much growth in the work that they do. And just diversity and inclusion is very important to Schwab. It's important to me. And I'm happy that I'm able to support those passions and still do my work.
I love that. And, it's pretty special when you can go to a place and feel like you are able to create change, not just in the work that you do every day, your functional area, but within the organization and the culture, and being, a driver of change in that way is quite a legacy. So thank you for that story, Candace.
Yeah, can I just say that, Candace really is a leader in our location and in our community with respect to her efforts with regards to diversity and inclusion and belonging. And she's really an inspiration to me in this space. And I'm incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to work with her and learn from her on all of this.
Oh, I love this. We need, to amplify each other more and do more to support one another. So that's fantastic, Elaine. Who has supported you along your journey?
So first and foremost, I would say my grandparents. They were always there for me and encouraged me, even although my life and my dreams were very, very different from anything that they had experienced. But I was fortunate to have a very loving home with them as a child. And then, as I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about the teachers, the grade school teachers, who had a huge influence on me, especially I think as someone who was the first generation in my family to attend university. And, teachers get paid nothing. So, in the very unlikely event any of them ever hear this, I would like to name them and just say thank you. There was Mrs. Maureen Winning, who was my fourth and fifth grade teacher in grade school. And then Miss Moira Kennedy, who taught me chemistry at secondary school, and Mrs. Pat Slavin, who taught me English. And there was also a Mr. Michael Brady, who taught me English. And I learned recently that he just passed away, but all of them were people I really respected and who had meaningful careers and were incredibly encouraging of me and kind and really showing me the future I could have and really pushed me to reach my full potential. I'm fortunate enough to have some very old friends who've been real cheerleaders for me along the way. And then my husband, Greg, has been just infeasibly supportive of my career. We've been married for 24 years. We have lived in 3 different countries and 4 different states in the United States. Every time we moved, it was for my job, and he just does it without question, and he just supports me and an incredible partner. And then when it actually comes to my career, I mean, I really think it takes a village to make any one person's career. And, as I was thinking about who I should actually speak about here, it really felt like naming a favourite child. I can't just name one person, but I hope I've thanked them along the way and I hope that they know who they are. But these are people who have given me opportunities to do things that maybe I have never done before and who've believed in me, who've stepped up for me when I have been struggling with someone in my career or something in my career and needed help. And we all go through those times, who have given me time off when I needed it to support my family, and all the other things that happen along the way where you need help and support from others. And I also really want to talk about peer support. I think it's so important to have the support of your peers and that mutual encouragement, as you spoke about a few minutes ago, is so important. And you know, most important of all, I'd like to thank the people like Candace, who I have had the opportunity to lead over the years and who've been kind enough to follow me and also to guide me and who've done amazing work and made it very, very easy for me to be a leader. So I've got an awful lot of people to thank after 32 years, and a huge number of people have supported me along the way.
Well, I appreciate that, because I do think that, especially as we're starting out in our career, we think it's a solo journey, right? It's that you put your head down, you work really hard, and things are going to work. And it's, every person for themselves. And that's, in my experience, not the case. And I'm curious, Candace, I mean, what does mentorship mean for you, particularly as Elaine mentioned, peer mentorship? Why is that important? And particularly, why is it important as you think about the work that you do within the organization around really fostering that inclusive culture?
Yes, I'd say that's the key word there, inclusive. And we talk a lot about diversity and numbers and demographics, but it's really an inclusive space, a place where I can show up every day and feel that my values are important, that I can be authentic, that I can bring my best self to work. That's where you'll get the best performance out of me. And that's what so many firms and Schwab, we're really striving to reach. I can talk to, where mentorship has helped me in my journey, and where I think the place of mentorship uh, and that type of support will help with retaining or even attracting diverse talent. I am a Black woman. When I join a firm, it's important that I see individuals that look like me and roles that I wish to aspire to. This helps with seeing the possibility of career progression and retaining qualified talent. In an industry that is still growing in the area of equitable diversity, the individuals in those seats have often been the first and or the only to gain entry to some of these roles. So I want to connect with those leaders. I want to learn about their journey to help me with avoiding some of their pitfalls or to assist me with walking through those same doors and keeping it open for the next person. It's equally important that I form allies with individuals that have a different background and a set of experiences than me. Oftentimes, these individuals can provide access to areas where there has been no precedent. They can speak for me and advocate to open doors in my career journey. So Schwab has really recognized this opportunity by developing mentor programs that are dedicated to bringing senior leaders together to serve as mentors, to support the career growth of employees of color, really focusing on leadership development and preparing them for career advancement opportunities. And I'm proud to say that I'm a participant in the first iteration of this program. We have to, if we want to see a more diverse and inclusive body across our firm and across the industry. And most importantly, in those senior leadership roles, we have to do what we can to help raise the next person up, and to really create spaces and opportunities where I feel included and where I feel like I belong.
And Elaine, as a leader within the organization, there's so much, there's a lot of conversation around the role that leaders play in driving diversity and inclusion, and seeing it as central to, the business metrics that you hold yourself accountable to, from a business standpoint. So what are your thoughts on this, and how do you as a leader take an active role in creating that inclusive culture as well?
So that's such a huge question, and such an important question. I think for far too long in my career, I thought about diversity purely from a business perspective, and I think, and I certainly in the workplace spoke about it purely from a business perspective. The economic metrics to support diversity, diverse teams, diverse leadership groups is beyond compelling. There's no question, I don't think, that diverse teams lead to higher revenues, higher growth, stronger share prices, etc., etc. So diversity is a win, and yet even in 2021, our corporations, sort of broadly speaking, do not reflect the populations that they serve, certainly not in leadership roles. So why is that? And, one of the things that, especially honestly in the past year, that has become important to me is talking about diversity and inclusion, not just from a business perspective. And I think it's important that we keep that front and center, because at the end of the day, it is the for-profit companies in the world that drive the economies of the planet and drive prosperity and so forth. So that clearly is critically important. But I hope that we all want to be part of a world that is just and fair, and where people don't have less opportunity because of the way they look, or the color of the skin, or who they love, or their gender, or any of the other reasons that people get sort of lumped into groups and become underrepresented. And I think that we all have to be exceptionally intentional in order to have a fairer and more just workplace and society. And we need to have processes, and Candace spoke about this in when she spoke as well. But yes, we need processes that support diverse hiring. But beyond that, you have to build a culture where the people that you hire feel like they belong and feel like they have a future. And I think if the last 50 years has shown us anything, it's that this change is not going to be organic. So we need to have thoughtful protocols and programs in place to drive this change. And, I can give you some examples of some of the things that we're doing at Schwab to increase our diversity. Candace spoke about the mentoring programs that we have in place. we have a survey that we engage in with Ariel Investments, where we actually do a survey of Black investors and try and understand what their needs are so that we can support them better. We have a scholarship endowment to 7 different colleges and universities to support students from underrepresented groups in building careers in financial services and hopefully at some point becoming employed by Charles Schwab. We're training our workforce to deliver financial education. Financial education is something that we think is critical in sort of developing a fairer economy. And we will be especially focusing on teenagers from low-income backgrounds and supporting them become more financially well educated and showing them hopefully the opportunity for a future and a career in financial services. So, it's obviously we need to build diverse pipelines of qualified people. But we also need to ensure that we're being truly objective in the other aspects of building a diverse workforce. We need to make sure that we're giving stretch opportunities to people in underrepresented groups. We need to make sure that they're getting the same opportunities to go on development programs. We need to make sure that we're paying them appropriately. And we need to have systems of accountability to make sure that we're doing all of those things. So it doesn't happen by accident, is really what I'm saying. You have to be intentional.
Yes, you do. You do have to be intentional. And, I especially appreciate, Elaine, that you're listing specific actions to take, which to me indicates that it's not just, saying it. Like, we can all say we need change. We can all say we need equality. But then actually having the framework to do it and putting that into place means that you mean it. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And, Candace, as Elaine's talking, I'm thinking so much about, over the past year, we had the pandemic, obviously, and how that's uprooted so many economically, from a health standpoint, professionally, as well as, Black Lives Matter and social unrest and everything that our employees bring with us into the workplace every day. And I would love to hear how you as a leader were best able to support your teams during this time.
I'd say that the work that we would probably normally do in the office, yes, you're in there, you're focusing on how we can best serve our clients and meeting performance metrics and how do we develop and grow. And when this pandemic hit, it was a hard stop and a hard pivot for all of us, as it was not just at our firm, but across the world. And what I learned really quickly or had to shift to is, don't let the now disrupt the future. So we had to figure out how to serve our clients because that work didn't cease, and how to provide the same level of service, but in a different way. And so we did this hard pivot where we moved from being in the office and collaborating, and that you don't realize how important that FaceTime is, and to now we're all working from home. And as a leader, I had to transition my thought process into how do I still provide the same level of service, but how do I keep my team engaged? How do I make sure that the culture doesn't dissipate? The culture that we worked so hard to build and create, and the culture of collaboration and the culture of inclusion that's in the office, and now we're all at home. And adding on that, now I no longer just have the wearing the hat as leader. I'm wearing the hat of teacher and counselor and healthcare giver and backyard travel agent, and just all of those things that I'm trying to do, but everyone else is trying to do as well. And it was a personal struggle as well as a professional struggle. And so I had to reprioritize my initiatives, reprioritize what's important and how we were allocating our resources, to still maintain that same level of performance, but then also keep our team engagement, keep that moving and keep that momentum. And what I did was try to do a lot more of bring more of the fun back into work. we still have work to do, but now, let's meet. And when we have all of these meetings, let's make sure our video is on. And certainly there were some of those awkward moments where I was the only one with video on with 20 plus people, and you just hang in there hoping someone makes that shift to join you. But you start to forget, how people look, and that coffee break time, in the coffee room was so important. And I in the office can see that someone's hurting, or see that someone's tired, or see that someone doesn't feel well, and you can't see that when someone is at home. So what I've learned is that I've had to make myself more vulnerable, more open, let people know that this door is still open, even though it's physically at a different location. I'm still here and support you. Luckily, Schwab was also very helpful in that area. We help to provide services to our employees, providing them discounts to childcare service, tutoring services, even offering free yoga classes, connecting them with local organizations and local resources that could provide that work-life balance and help people with managing everything that they've been facing. You mentioned there's social unrest, there's the health issues with the pandemic. Everyone has been impacted and everyone is hurting. And it's all about how I can support you, not just technically, you need a computer and a monitor to do your work, but how can I support you in still meeting your professional development goals? How can I support you in managing any personal issues that you may have? How do I let you know that I am here and make accommodations for you so that you can take care of your family, take care of yourself, and still do what you need to do at work?
Candace, you really are the definition of a leader. I've spoken to so many leaders across the board over the past couple months who are struggling with this, and how we show up for our teams, how we ourselves navigate the times we're living in. And clearly your passion for leadership shines through, and you connect very deeply with your team and how you support them. So thank you for that. Elaine, do you have any best practices you've leaned on during this time, or insights on how you've grown as a leader?
So first of all, I think, Candace gave a perfect answer, and I have very, very little to add. But the couple of things that I would say is, and, certainly, Candace alluded to this, is I've learned a lot about myself these past 12 months. And I truly believe that the more self-aware you are, the better you are at everything in your life. And so consequently, you'll be a better leader as well. The other thing that I think I really appreciated and have really appreciated about the past year, and it's actually a year today since we left the office. So this is the 1 year anniversary of us last being in the office, Candace and I, is how inspired I've been with this by the strength of the people in our team and in our company. I've had a very easy pandemic in comparison to so many others. I haven't had kids to homeschool. I haven't had sick family members. I've had a very, very easy time of it. And I've watched people around me who have had all of these challenges that they've had to face, economic challenges. And I've just found the way that people have come together to support each other and to build community, despite the fact that we have not been in the same place, incredibly inspiring. And it just made me even more committed to all of them and to try and do the right thing by them. The other thing that I would say is that I have been very intentional during this time when we've met as a team in speaking about times in my life when I have had to step away from work, or when I have needed flexible working hours in order to support my family. Because even when you're in relatively senior positions in a firm, certainly I have found it pretty daunting to have to go to even the best leaders and say, I'm going to need a bit of flexibility over the next couple of months because of this thing that's happening in my life. It's a difficult conversation to have. And I wanted people to know that I had to have that conversation so that they would feel comfortable having that conversation too. So I really wanted to sort of try and model the way for them and to take away any concerns that they may have about asking for that flexibility. I think it's one thing to offer flexibility and know that it's being offered, but it's another thing to actually hold your hand up and say, I think I may need some of that. And so I wanted people to feel very comfortable taking that step.
Yes, I know. It's personally, I mean, it's been hard for me. I think we as leaders believe, we just always have to be on and we have to be present and we have to, follow a certain model. And we've come to realize that the best way to lead is by example, and to acknowledge that we all need to step back at some times, or to make sure that we're shoring up our own resources so that we can continue to lead in the best way possible. So thank you for that vulnerability and for being so honest about that. I've really enjoyed speaking to both of you, Elaine and Candace, today. I just think we need to have these conversations more about how we change the culture of business, how we redefine leadership, and how we continue to lead with strength and resilience during this time into the future, as we look towards really diversifying the landscape of leadership and what that will mean in terms of how we impact business. Having a model to follow, such as the two of you, is inspiring, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way. Are there any final thoughts you wanted to leave us with today, Elaine or Candace?
I like to say, when in preparing for this call, I had a conversation with Elaine, and she says, one of the topics we're going to talk about mentorship, and that is why the two of us were brought together. Elaine says, well, I don't feel like I've been your mentor, Candace, and I laughed. I said, well, that is the point. It didn't take a formal mentorship program to bring us together. A lot of the partnerships and that we've garnered that have really built my career, and probably many others, are more organic relationships that you create with people who have led by example, people who you look up to and inspire to be like, people who have taught you how to be humble, honest, and open. Elaine knows empathy is not very high on my strength list, but following after Elaine and watching how she treats and works with everyone on her team has really helped me with growing and developing in that area. So what I'd say that, get next to someone who can inspire you, and be at a firm or at a place, or the whatever work that you do, that you can exude passion behind, and where you can follow your dreams as well as doing the work that you need to do and putting food on your table. I just love that Schwab has offered me the chance to help with my diversity and inclusion passions, as well as risk and compliance. And we've grown so much in the area of all of the activities that we do to really support one another. One hand won't clap. It takes a village. We have to all work together. We have to support one another.
So if I could just say, it's incredibly humbling to me to hear Candace speak of me as a mentor, and because she is such a remarkable and talented and gifted leader. But just sort of piggybacking off of what Candace was saying, I think often people think of mentorship or sponsorship as sort of selfless things that you do for other people, and that the person who benefits is the person who's being mentored or sponsored. And I think we really need to change the thinking on that. First of all, I honestly think that in any mentoring or sponsorship relationship I've ever had, I have gained a lot more than I have ever given. I have learned a lot more than I have ever taught. And so it has been an opportunity for me to learn and to grow myself. And if we're going back to, the perspective of, in an organization, I think the duty of a leader, and I've thought about this a lot recently as I get ready to leave, and I've thought about it a lot when I've been leaving positions before to move on to other roles. My job as a leader is to leave behind a team or a group or a company, whatever role you're in, that doesn't notice I'm gone. And to me, that's what sponsorship is about. It's about nurturing, it's about developing, it's about making sure that there is talent there when you are no longer there, when you're not in that job, that can make sure that that team, that company continues to grow, continues to innovate without you. We're all just stewards of the organizations that we're part of. And so I would really encourage people to give what they can from a mentoring and sponsorship perspective, and not to think that somehow it's an act of charity. It's quite the contrary. It's actually quite a selfish act. I invest a lot of my time in mentoring, and people say that's a wonderful thing that you do, but actually I think it's a selfish thing that I do, because I gain a lot more than I give.
Well, I know I want to work with the two of you, so I mean, it's just inspiring and it's real. And thank you for being a part of this conversation, for all that you do for your colleagues, for Schwab, and for us, for sharing your insights with our community. So Elaine and Candace, it was wonderful to speak with you today, and thanks for being on the Ellevate podcast.
Thank you, Kristy. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
On Deloitte's OnCloud podcast, my co-host Mike Cavus and I talk with innovation leaders to explore how they use cloud engineering for new possibilities for their organizations. Join myself, David Linthicum, by subscribing to OnCloud, wherever you get your podcasts.